Max Olson, ESPN, joins us now on 365 Sports. Max, we had a quote earlier from Brett Yormark, and again, this could have come yesterday, it was today, about the fact that there will be automatic bids, and he wants everybody to earn it. Craig brought this up. You had one team out of 12, which is 8%. If you have 2 out of 12, that, of course, is a higher number. 2 out of 14 still a higher number. Heck, 2 out of 16 is a higher number. Should the Big 12 just be happy with 2 moving forward, or do you think that Yormark, unless somebody else backs him up around the country, is just talking?
It's a good question. Like, in those conversations, in those rooms where they have these talks, like, I mean, I don't think it's just like media portrayal of like, wow, it seems like Sankey and Stidi have the leverage and the power in these conversations. Like, I think that is the case. So I think it's like, now, do I really think those guys would split off and run their own postseason? Like, no, I don't think so. But I think it's a tough spot to be in, I think, for Brett Yormark and I think probably for the ACC of just like, okay, what are the concessions that you need to get to feel like ultimately, hey, this is a good deal for our conference? I think if you're expanding it, then yeah, I think guaranteeing 2, I think as a conference, you would probably have to feel pretty good about that, because I think the reality is that, and this is like a tough reality, but you know, there's parity in the Big 12, but it's difficult for the programs in this conference to consistently put together a bunch of top 25 or certainly not like top 10 recruiting classes, right? To feel like, okay, we can, you know, consistently play for national championships. Now the portal makes that easier if you have the money. But I mean, I think it's going to be tough I don't think there's going to be that many years where you're like, actually, there should be 4 Big 12 teams out of this 12 or something like that, right? So I think it's like, I think that in some ways, you probably have to take what you can get, because it is going to be hard for the conference to have, like one power that's always competing for national championships.
I think the thing that just bothers me about it, Max, of them, like, it shouldn't be preordained. They're going to get what they want most of the time anyway. So, like, what are we preventing here? You know, like what?
Correct. Like, yeah. it has to be limiting for the SEC and the Big Ten for it to be fair, right? Yeah. There's going to be some times when they have more than 4 that should be in, and that's not how it breaks for them. And yeah, I think if you look at the history of the playoffs, I don't know that you would say, oh, this is a great move for them in every way. But like, yeah, that is that's a hard thing to like just compromise on. But one that certainly I think right now in the current deal, everybody has to have consensus on. Going forward, you know, not so much.
Max, a couple of days ago, Richard Reese, a former all-freshman Big 12 running back at Baylor, entered the transfer portal. It's been pretty quiet portal-wise here at present. But just any idea of sort of the suitors possibly for Richard Reese at this point?
I haven't heard so far. I think probably smart of him to put his name out there early as someone that is going to be available, because I think, you know, we're a month out from the portal opening. And, you know, truly have not heard a lot of names, a lot of big names that are planning to go in yet. I think that'll start to kind of trickle out here over the next few weeks. But I do think there's some advantage to being one of the only like known proven guys out there. And, you know, I think certainly that production that he had as a freshman is going to get people's attention. Obviously, the last 2 years didn't get the ball as much. But, I still think that, certainly teams are looking to have, complementary running backs and kind of have stable approach these days. So I would imagine he'll find a good spot, and probably think I would think he can find a spot at the Power 4 level.
Your tweet from earlier today, we're 1 month away from the spring transfer portal. It's the last chance to spend big before revenue sharing cap. But will elite talent hit the market? Will that create more elite talent hitting the market or less?
Well, I think it's just a different deal in this offseason because teams have dedicated so much money to paying their current players to bring them back for 25. And so, in November, December, you had every program out there trying to, renegotiate with all of their returning players and agree on a number and a deal that felt good so that player wasn't going to go in the portal. And so I think when you talk to, I talked to a dozen GMs and DPPs and a few agents for this piece. And, I think the sense is like you hope that those retention efforts pay off, that guys are not looking to leave at the end of the spring. But I think that you have to recognize that that players can certainly come back to the coaches in April and say, okay, well, I had a good spring, so I want more money now. And I think that's the thing that's going to be pretty difficult for these teams to work through, because they're going to be under a salary cap when the House settlement is approved. And they just might not be able to afford to keep everybody, just as they weren't in December. And so I don't know that you will. I think traditionally you don't see big name quarterbacks go in the spring portal. You don't see a ton of big time players, make those moves. But this is kind of the last chance for people to spend their collective money. And so I think the teams that are still trying to load up for a playoff run, there's going to be that kind of tampering and trying to get elite players.
Do you feel that any of the non-spring game stuff, the shrinking of spring football, will affect the portal in any way, shape, or form?
That's a good question. I don't think to cancel your spring game over tampering, I understand on a case-by-case basis why that's very frustrating to have to fight that in April. But I don't think that I don't know how much teams are necessarily watching a spring game on ESPNU and then saying, let's go get that guy, and then they get him in the portal. It can happen, definitely. And I know in the case of Matt Rule in Nebraska, they had to fight to hold on to two of their starters after last year's spring game, which was televised on Big Ten Network. But I think that I don't know that it's gonna. I don't think it's gonna have much of an impact on more players or fewer players going in, just because a few programs aren't playing their spring games. But I do think that stuff is still important. I do think having a spring game, and especially with how many newcomers every team is working with, I think it's good to get those live reps and get that experience and stuff. But certainly understand from the coach's standpoint. I think coaches are very paranoid of they do not want to put a spotlight on their guys, and especially their young players, that could lead to them, having people contact them and trying to persuade them with big money.
How's that been taken locally in Nebraska, Max? I've heard plenty from Matt Rule and heard him explain the reasoning behind it, and I understand it, but that was also kind of a proud thing of we're going to pack this spring game. Has anybody really balked at that, or is it just all right, yeah, it makes sense?
To be your best requires commitment, dedication, and intensity. It's what defines elite athletes and inspires Airwaav to find new ways to optimize your performance. Introducing Airwaav Recovery, a mouthpiece designed to work while you sleep to further unlock your potential. Airwaav Recovery features our patented reflex technology. Small, integrated bumps uniquely positioned to activate your tongue's natural response. Your tongue will instinctively move forward, opening your airway and improving your quality of sleep. And thanks to our patented fitting material and a purpose-designed support wall, you'll enjoy a secure, comfortable fit all night long. With Airwaav Recovery, you sleep better and recharge faster. Airwaav Recovery, recharge your potential.
Yeah, sure. There's I think there's some element of or there's some level of disappointment, because that has been a big tradition for that Nebraska fan base. I think for the first year of Scott Frost, they drew 86,000 for their spring game, which was the school record. So that's something that they in the past took pride in, of we're going to have big attendance for this, and therefore this will be a big recruiting weekend and all of that. So I do think you lose something there. Now they're doing a fan fest and 7-on-7 and all these things to replace it. And they're charging for admission for that, so you're still trying to make up for some of that lost revenue. But I can understand it from Matt Rule's perspective, but definitely was a big tradition around here.
How much did you know Dan Wetzel, who's in the business, he's at ESPN with you guys, and what a huge – he was on with us a lot, as much as maybe you or Sam and others always enjoyed his opinions, didn't always agree with everything, because that's good we don't. Your thoughts about him adding himself to ESPN?
Yeah, very, very exciting. Dan Wetzel, truly just one of the best in the business, as a columnist, as an investigative reporter. I think that what he achieved at Yahoo Sports in making that I mean, going to a site that's like a search engine and turning it into a real destination for sports coverage is extremely impressive. So yeah, that's a huge move for ESPN. Excited to work with them.
Max, will you venture around to the remaining spring games? I mean, I know that like there's a running list of schools that aren't doing it, or was it just better for you to go to whatever practices they'll let you go to?
Yeah, I think it's more beneficial to go over to practices and just go do campus visits in the spring and summer when you can. So yeah, I don't know how much any of us like really build our schedules around. I'm going to try to be at these certain spring games. I think the last spring game I went to, like to cover, was probably Oklahoma a couple of years ago, and like pretty useful in terms of like seeing new talent and kind of seeing what the depth chart looks like and things like that. But certainly that they do a good job of making players available and coaches available after that. But yeah, I would say, like, I don't know, what do you guys think? Like, if spring games, like if that was like a thing of the past, would that be like, how would that be received there?
I wouldn't miss it at all.
I wonder if it depends on
I don't
who
think you're the right person to even ask, though, Paul.
Yeah.
Honestly, like you're not somebody that was ever into. I'll say as somebody
Paul
who's actually
does not want to watch Florida State spring games, so like that, he's not the right person to ask.
Yeah, and who would? No, but no, like he's not really involved. Like he wasn't a big going to all those events type of thing. As somebody who would go to all of them every year, I'm actually cool with it. Like if you give us just a little bit of access to be able to get in there on occasion, I'm fine with that, but I don't need you to, have like some big spring game. And quite honestly, the last couple of times, we've been sitting in the press box halfway through going like, is this thing almost over yet? So yeah. I think we're kind of okay with it as well.
Like, obviously on my end with my job, there's a lot of the personnel side of things. And so I'm interested to see, hey, how does this freshman or how does this transfer or this new quarterback, how does that stuff look? But I mean, certainly like sitting in the stands, you can't say it's like good football.
No. Yeah, no, absolutely not. Yeah, so I think, just doing something like a little scrimmage or something like that, maybe give us a little, look in on occasion every couple of days. I think that's more than enough as far as I'm concerned. Max, there was a leak of one of the covers of the new video game that will be coming out this summer, and that led me to just want to know, where are you with your dynasty? How has whatever Max's team has been since the video game came out? I know you're a busy man, but like, what have you built up over the last year with the video game in your hands?
I mean, that's a tremendous question. You couldn't have asked it a better time. First of all, I want to say that the image that leaked out of the photo shoot, real head coaches in that photo shoot, saw James Franklin and Lane Kiffin and a bunch of guys. So if that game's going to have real coaches in it for next year, that would be a huge addition. That'd be very cool. Boys, we got a national championship game tonight.
Oh,
in the dynasty. Yeah, I'm in. We're actually me and my buddies from college. We are doing a Big 12 online dynasty, and I chose Texas Tech, and we are playing Oklahoma State for a national championship tonight.
Wow, that's big time.
Wow.
We're in year two here. Year two. So Micah Hudson, Baron Morton. We got Matthew Golden for year two. We've had a great year.
You stole Matthew Golden from Texas?
Yeah.
We met and guess who my running back is at Texas Tech in year two? We got Richard Reese.
Okay.
Yeah.
Max, I am in 2032 now of my FSU dynasty. And
love it.
Last 2031, I moved some teams into the Big Ten. I got to tell you, didn't do anything for me. So I won the national championship in the Big Ten title because that's what I do. But I am now going into the SEC and to see if that's more challenging and exciting.
Wait a minute. You can't go into a conference that doesn't want you.
Well, now, here's the deal. Yeah, well, you can in this game. And here's the deal. I got Ohio State and Michigan, but they both sucked. So, I kind of got lucky, and I didn't have to play Oregon. So,
and Paul, you just at the point now where you're just like signing 25 stars every year?
About 8. Like 8. You get them. But sometimes it's maddening because they're like, hey, number 1 on your list the whole time. And the minute you sign another 5-star at another position, it's like the algorithm in the game's like, nah, you've had enough. And they always go to Miami and Florida. Always. Never never to a school that I don't care about. Always my rival schools. I wonder what the programming is in the game, but we'll see if I can win the SEC in 2032.
Best of luck to you. I have one thing I have done in Dynasty that is pretty fun is in the off season, 1 year after just getting through a bunch of seasons, going back and resetting the conferences back to like 2019, back to like the good old days, which feels like a long time ago. A bit of a pain to set up all the old divisions again and stuff, but funny to make everybody go back to where they used to be.
And it just all makes sense. It actually makes sense when you see all these teams aligned together the way that they are. Man, what did we have that's no longer ever going to be the same? I mean, there were warning signs. Not that we could do anything about it, of course, but, I mean, that leads us even into Paul bringing up Florida State. Surprised you didn't choose the SEC, since that'll also maybe be in the cards. But
I wanted to do it so I could see, because I feel like more Florida State fans want the Big Ten because they're spiteful of the SEC. Even if the Big Ten's part of that, they should be spiteful of both of them. But whatever.
Well, what you should do for a year, Paul, is try going independent then and just make up your own schedule.
Ooh, yeah, okay, that's better. Yeah, I think
they were independent for a while.
Yeah,
they were.
Yeah, I'll go back to 1987. Let's rock.
Max, did you have any thoughts on that story last week? Just the whole settling the resolution of the lawsuit between Florida State, Clemson, and the ACC?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that ultimately they would come to a compromise that keeps things together here for the next few years. Because I don't think anybody believed that Florida State and Clemson were one call away from joining another conference. I do think, like, from a big picture standpoint, I'm sure you guys talked about this, but do we really think that the unequal revenue sharing is going to be a thing that everybody's happy with here in a couple of years?
No.
I mean, I think if you're like at Boston College, you're like, I think we're about to get screwed really hard in this league. You know what I mean? Like, I think the bottom of that conference, it's just going to be such an uphill climb. And I'm not saying that like the merit-based pay doesn't make sense, but I just think the history. I think even Greg Sankey has said this. Like, the history of college athletics is that like not great things maybe come from that. And so and that's the Big 12. Probably would have been willing to do that, gun to its head with Texas and Oklahoma, but those guys moved on before it came to that. I suppose in some ways they did with the third party, the third tier rights, but you kind of wonder about, like, I understand you want to keep the family together, but I don't think that we're really done talking about people being disgruntled within that conference just with the way that that's going to be set up here going forward.
Do you think that will be contagious in the other leagues, though?
I don't know. I don't know how much I see the SEC being next or the other leagues being next on that. I don't know that there's a member of the Big 12 that is so far superior to the rest that
Utah's
somebody should be asking for that.
Utah will try to say that they're deserving.
Yeah, I don't know that I see it being replicated, but I think the other piece of that, and I know Andy Staples and other people have pointed this out, big piece of this was just that Florida State and others wanted to know what's the number if we leave the conference, and certainly that number is going to be under $100 million here in the not too distant future. So does that mean that we're going to have another wave of realignment? When the next round of TV deals are up, like, I think you'd probably have to bet at this point that there's a decent chance of that.
I would not bet against it, because I just feel like that's just going to be a chasm of just poof.
Someday there will be more consolidation, don't you think? And I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just saying I think that we can't sit here and say that we're done with it.
Yeah, I think when you hear people start to spout like, well, what about if so-and-so joins and joins and joins and the Pac adds these schools and the Big 12, it's like they're consolidating. They're not growing. Like, that's the thing to me, right, is like I think if anything, they're shrinking it down. They're not trying to add more and more and more. So, yeah, I think that's definitely on the table. I think the only saving grace for the ACC is like they're holding it together, even if it's toothpicks and scotch tape right now, and just hoping that like the next 5 years is as crazy as the last 5 years. So it's totally unpredictable, and maybe somehow it works for them in the long run, right? But that's all you're really hoping
and we'll
for.
Just have to see, like, with these advantages, if you're Clemson or Miami or Florida State or whoever, is it true? Can you actually like close the gap on the top teams in the SEC, and can you get a bunch of wins against them in the playoff and stuff, or will that not ultimately still make the difference?
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't know.
None of us do. That's the whole point.
Yeah,
that's what we're going to see in the next 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why it's so. I mean, and it's probably not going to be quite what we think. Somehow won't be quite what we think. Like, I don't think anyone ever thought it would be Oregon and Washington in the Big Ten, or the changes. No. Some of the other movement, maybe yes, but that's what makes. It would be nice, and I know it's been great for college football for all of us that cover it, including you. But at the same time, wouldn't it be nice to have a year where we just talk about wins and losses in the games?
Yeah, and I would like to have a summer off here at some point. I mean, I'm sure you guys would too.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Thank you, man.
Good luck, man, with the
Hey,
national
thanks,
championship.
guys. Appreciate
game.
you.
Good
Yeah,
luck.
good
with
luck.
that.
Hey,
tonight.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. No pressure. We got this.
Texas Tech and the
And Oklahoma State.
Raiders and Oklahoma State.
in the national title.
They're very similar schools, and then they're not.